What's up, everybody? This is The Hit List coming at you, and we will be a comic book conversation show about everything comic books and pop culture. My name is Cool Tyrone, and I've been at this for quite a while. My boy Steve and I, we coined the phrase comic connoisseur. I've been collecting comic books for, well over 20 some odd years. I've traveled from coast to coast to go cons and get signatures. And I just love all things comic books. So we're gonna hopefully bring you guys into our world and talk a little bit more about comic books and ideas and things like that.
Yep. Hey, everyone. This is Steve. I've been collecting comics now for around 20 years as well. I used to go to cons up and down, mostly California, San Diego Comic Con, 10 years in a row, 2000, 2010. And yeah, all about it. All about the comic life.
There you go. So today we're going to be talking about five of our favorite Marvel storylines that involve solo characters. So not groups, but the character all by themselves. Make sure down below you hit the like, subscribe, and the share button so you can pass the word on to your friends and families and fellow collectors about our show. And with that,
hopefully you'll get some good ideas for stories to read off of this.
Yeah. And so with that, let's move on. So I'm actually going to start off with one of my favorite solo books. I have not been a major fan of Thor. However, this particular Thor story is one that stood out to me. When I started learning about a writer by the name of J. Michael Straczynski, and I saw that he was writing Thor, having been a fan of some of his previous stuff, I immediately jumped on board with this story. And I have to tell you, J. Michael Straczynski's Thor is hand down, top notch, absolute flat out great story. So if you like Thor, if you like J. Michael Straczynski, this is definitely one you want to go and pick up. This is all about bringing Asgard back. And I just have to tell you, not only did Olivier Coipel bring in some amazing artwork with this storyline, but J. Michael Straczynski just literally blew the top off of this. The way he was able to marry the current situation that Thor's in and connect it with the Asgards and how all of that fit into a current situation, it was perfect all the way around. So for me, J. Michael Straczynski's Thor is one of the most memorable stories that I've had to read in the last few years. Not only do I have the individual issues, but I also have the hardback. So I know if I go out and buy the hardback of something, for me, that means I really like it and I want to read it multiple times, but leave the single issues stuck into my collection. So that way they stay nice and crispy clean. Over to you, Steve.
So my first pick, Captain America. Ed Brubaker, Steve Epting's epic run. I'm going to start with their first storyline, Out of Time. It was just the start of just a really strong run. Brubaker, top of his game, really knows Captain America, had his voice down. I mean, now everybody knows the Winter Soldier, but back in the day, it was pretty much a rule that some characters stay dead. One of them being Bucky.
Right.
If that's a spoiler alert for you guys, I don't know what to tell you.
It's too late now.
I've not watched any Marvel movies in the last, 20 years.
Yeah.
But that storyline kicked everything off, basically focusing on how he came to be the Red Skull, main Captain America villain. Really focused on just putting the pieces together for the next 20, 30 issues.
Yeah, I have to say that Brubaker's Captain America was definitely a big favorite for me.
What really set this story apart, obviously, besides setting the stage, bringing in the Winter Soldier, but you've got new villains. You've got the Red Skull, classic villain, and you've got just fantastic artwork. Steve Epting, he really knocked it out of the park with that one. Just a good mix of gritty realism, but also kind of keeping it in the action adventure kind of style.
That's a great way to describe his art. It does have that realistic, gritty flavor to it, and it comes across as being very much so like real life.
Yeah.
For me, my second one, I'm gonna go with, and for me, this was kind of a this was kind of a sweet thing for me. I'd known this writer, Ta-Nehisi Coates, from some of his prose novel books. And so when it came out that he was going to be writing Black Panther, for me, it was probably one of the sweetest treats that year. So Black Panther by Ta-Nehisi Coates and Brian Stelfreeze started off that new series, and it hit the ground running. This story is all about how the Wakandans have decided that they don't want to live under the monarchy of T'Challa. They want to go a different direction. And so with that, two and then eventually three kind of factions begin to emerge from the Wakandans. And again, without giving too much of it away, and if you haven't read it, again, this is one that you definitely want to pick up. I think this is one of the defining moments of T'Challa's reign as the Black Panther. I think this sets him apart as why he is, at this point, considered, out of all the other Black Panthers, the greatest Black Panther to have ever lived. Whether it's with Tony Stark, with Secret Invasion, he is just 15, 20 steps ahead of whatever it is that's going on. So this story had so much grit. It had so much reality. It definitely, for me, as I watched the Black Panther movie, it had pieces of this story, because you have that part where Killmonger was thinking, well, this is the way you've been doing it, but there's another way. And of course, in this whole process, like the movie, in the storyline of the book, he had to figure out a way of listening to his followers, but also maintaining being the king. And for T'Challa and all the things that he's done and all the different crossovers, whether it's Daredevil or Fantastic Four, that part has always played a story. Am I king first? Am I Black Panther first? Am I, this person who's trying to figure things out and kind of brave their own path? So that continued through this, and it just exploded into this amazing, well-drawn, well-thought-out story that just put, Black Panther back on the map. I think it catapulted Black Panther back up to a very popular character, which was a great thing, because then it led into an absolutely fantastic movie.
Now, what about Christopher Priest's run on Black Panther?
Christopher Priest's run on Black Panther is, of course, legendary. Christopher Priest is he's second, right? So we know that the top would be Kirby, who created all of this characters, background, history, canon, you name it, along with Stan Lee helping him, and then of course some more character development by creators along the way. But if you have to rate Black Panther writers throughout the years, and there's been a few, grab here, but of course Christopher Priest, his birth of work, the amount of issues that he's done and the stories that he's told and the intricate stories he's told, just put him up there only under Kirby. And I think Ta-Nehisi Coates, had he continued writing, maybe he would get there. But at this point, he's still under Christopher Priest. And Christopher Priest is just, in almost all of the stuff that he's writing, whether it was over at DC where he's doing Steel, or now, he's doing Deathstroke, which is really good. That's another one you should pick up, but that'll be another show. Christopher Priest has shown that he knows Black Panther in and out. He knows Black Panther in and out, whereas Ta-Nehisi Coates brought in an outside story to kind of give Black Panther a little bit more depth to his character.
So moving on to my next favorite solo story, Daredevil by Brian Michael Bendis, Alex Maleev. Another epic run. This was in the middle of their run. I know a lot of people are very high on the initial storylines they had where Daredevil got outed and he became the Kingpin. So this story takes place, this is Decalogue, it's issues 71 to 75 in his run, and it takes place after he becomes Kingpin, and it's told mostly from the point of view of this. It's like a support group in Hell's Kitchen for everybody sort of dealing with the fallout, if you will. And most of the run is very much centered around gangsters or daredevils, angst with having to deal with everything, and his personal life merging with his Daredevil life. This story was different. It felt like it had those elements, but it also had this sort of spooky supernatural element. This one's, you should definitely pick it up for the simple fact that you've got good storytelling, good pacing. It's got this, if you like sort of that creepy, weird what's going on here, with a little bit of superhero, not that much actually. With Daredevil, he's actually not in it too much, but the whole story itself, it comes together. It feels like it's like an anthology of each issue, but then it's put together. Highly recommended. I've gone back to it a bunch of times now. I mean, this is right. And it was written 2005, so and I can remember, still killing it.
Yeah, I can remember you turning me on to Brian Michael Bendis, even though I had read Ultimate Spider-Man a little bit, but you began to turn me on back when he did Powers, and I think it was called Torso.
Torso, and Goldfish, and Jinx. Those are all.
That's what it was.
Those were all like black and white original graphic novels that he did. I think pre Marvel stuff, or maybe in between it.
No, it was pre.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember reading some of those thinking, okay, this dude really can write.
He has a natural gift for dialogue, and it really shines through in Ultimate Spider-Man, Daredevil, a bunch of his other books, but coupled with, an artist like Maleev, where it's, another one of those gritty realism, but more in the painted style. Epting's a little bit more, I don't know, sort of traditional in sort of traditional, comic coloring-ish style. Maleev is paint, very much like he's using brush strokes.
And that was the creative team on this Daredevil story?
Yes.
Brian Michael Bendis, Alex Maleev. Cool. Well, I'm going to jump right back in, man. I think one of the things that I like about writers, and for me, I try to follow the writer, is the writer able to draw me into the story? Is there something that the writer has done to make me want to go out and buy a book? And there's a writer over at DC who I'm not going to name right now. We'll save that for the DC show, who's done that periodically throughout his career for me. The next story wasn't actually the writer per se. I think the writer did a really, really great job. But I also believe in general the writer, the character, and and just the creative team brought this whole story together. So for me, Invincible Iron Man, Riri Williams, excuse me, for me just was, it was an amazing story. I picked it up from issue 1, having read the Iron Man story previously, and learning about this young girl who had reverse engineered the Iron Man suit and had it to work for her. And then once Tony Stark dies, he basically becomes her Friday. He mentors her, teaches her, takes her through the steps of being Iron Man. And I just have to say, from the first issue, they set this character up to be a long-lasting, deep character that's going to be used a great deal in the Marvel universe, and to date, that's exactly what they've done. Riri Williams is this really energetic, charismatic kid who came from a background that had some tragedy, and through all of the tragedy, she has been able to persevere with her and her mom and her stepdad, and they just move forward within this story. I see her literally getting better and better with using the suit on her own, taking keys from Tony, and then trying to figure out some things on her own. They are setting her up to be, again, for me, when I read this story, they're setting her up to be this long-lasting, longevity character that they can pull on year after year after year after year down the line. And I've read some really good stories about Iron Man's grandkids through an Avengers story, and I don't know if those two are going to be connected at some point, or his granddaughter kind of looks like, she could have been the child of Riri Williams later on down the line. But this story, and I have to say, this story not only is a good story for people who love Iron Man. So if you're a big Iron Man fan, this is going to fall right in line with Iron Man. But it's also a good story because it's going to, from what I can see and what I've done by talking to people reading it, it's bringing little girls into the fold of reading comic books. And I know for myself, having 2 daughters, I want them to be able to enjoy comics. I want them to be able to see themselves in comics. I want them to be able to see those same positive images that most, white male characters can see in themselves as the characters that they can see in Riri Williams. So for me, I think Riri Williams was on time. It was, again, another Brian Michael Bendis creation. And again, that I think it just speaks to his ability to write. It speaks to his ability to create. He just, I've met him quite a few times, and every time I pick up something that he's done, he's one of those writers where he wants, even though I may know nothing about the character, and again, I'm not a big Marvel guy, even though I like a lot of the characters. I'm not an avid reader of Iron Man. Again, I try to follow the storyline based on the person who's writing it. He made me want to read this book. And I can say Brian Michael Bendis has made me want to read quite a few books, which is really good. And I say, go pick this up. I know some people had some issues with, why are we bringing in, these different characters, and why are we, making characters Black, or why are we making them female, or why are we doing this? And, I just want to remind you, man, that they were doing that back in Image a long time ago. If you are a true fan of Iron Man, this will fall right in place with your Iron Man collection. So definitely go and pick up that Invisible Iron Man. And I know a lot of people have, but if you haven't, it's definitely a good one to pick up.
Who was the main artist on that story?
That's a good question, man. And this is a perfect example. I don't actually know who the main artist was, because for me, and the artist was, I want to be clear, I have the art is crisp, and I can't remember the artist name off my hand, and I'm gonna look him up real quick. But that, for me, that's a testament of how good the story was and how it moved along well. And for me, it was the story that continued to drive that book. And I know that because I couldn't even offhand, I can't tell you who that artist is. I want to say the artist is Eve L. Ewing. And again, they did a marvelous job. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of the new artists that are coming out of Mexico, that are coming out of South America, Brazil, they aren't people that I know offhand because, you know, I think they're building their careers. But this group, this team, they did a boss job on this book.
Nice. My next favorite solo book from Marvel, storyline wise, got it right here in hardback. Wolverine, Old Man Logan.
Logan, baby.
Mark Miller, Steve McNiven. Another crack team. These guys have worked together a bunch of times now. I think this is one of their first stories together. Mark Miller doing what he does best, doing that blockbuster storyline, throwing twists and turns. I think he had a lot of creative freedom with this story in particular because it's, to my knowledge, it's almost like an Elseworld story, right? It's like a what if. They have brought him into, I guess, the 616 continuity, but the story itself is it's just so wild. Like, he just does all these things that, you know, Wolverine's sort of not typically known for. Obviously, as sort of the name implies, it's been a minute since he was Wolverine. It's got that spaghetti western feel. Steve McNiven. I mean, if you've seen any of his stuff, I think your shirt is Steve McNiven, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, the shirt is a little bit of everybody. So it's Steve McNiven and Jimmy Chung and a few others. But, you know, the one part, there's a few parts of Old Man Logan that I really like. And I have to say the one part that stands out is the introduction is bringing Hawkeye back.
Yeah. Hawkeye is, I mean, he's always been a badass, but now he's an old badass.
Yeah.
In the storyline. And there's another one here. Again, spoiler alert, guys. Red Skull is one of the key villains.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the Marvel universe in there. Mark Miller's just throwing a bunch of things at you, trying to make your head spin because it is sort of an alternate universe, and you know, it's so he doesn't have to follow sort of whatever continuity the normal writers are you know, focusing on right now.
Right.
But it's definitely one you should pick up. And even I would say even the newer stuff. Old Man Logan has his own run right now, his own solo book. This book, to be clear, is from Wolverine, one of the earlier Wolverine series, issue 66 to 72, and then they did a giant size issue to conclude everything.
I have to admit that there's probably three major pieces in that story that stick out to me, and it was the introduction of Old Man Hawkeye, which I think he tried to get his own title or reappeared later on after the story. Wolverine's journey to the Hulks, and what happened when he ends up connecting with the Red Skull, and when we see exactly what the Red Skull is up to. So good story, man. Good story. I'm going to go back because you brought in a very good Captain America story. And that Captain America story was very good. But I want to bring in a Captain America story this story made my jaw drop in every sense of the word. A little back history. So John Nee Ryber, I did not know who he was until a previous book where he wrote I'm going to get this right, the G.I. Joe Transformers crossover back with DreamWorks? No, Image. Maybe I have to check the publisher on it. But Johnny Ryber and Jay Lee wrote a book. It's a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover. It was basically set back in World War II, I think it was. Beautiful book. when he came over to this Captain America, having read that previous book, which I figured the G.I. Joe thing was kind of up his alley. The Captain America was up his alley because he did G.I. Joe. When I cracked open the first issue of this book, I knew hands down I needed to buy multiple copies. This dude, along with John Cassidy, created an Captain America that was so relevant to today's society. I have to admit, this piece was very real to me because there was a lot of horrible injustice and racism that was going on in America at this time. And when this book came out, this book met it head on. He created a Captain America that really says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and all men are created equal. And for me, that just resonated. And I have to tell you that I'm a little bit biased to John Cassidy because the dude is an amazing artist. So I think this is a perfect marriage of story and art. But the whole driving force of this was the story. And John D. Rybert spun a tale that was, at the time, second to none. I would have put that book up against any book that came out during probably that month or those 6 months. That book created a Captain America that I was proud of. That book created a Captain America that was not afraid to speak and walk the walk that so many people who may felt like he's not saying this, he's not doing this. I think he was able to go further. I think this storyline made him go a little bit deeper. He realized that, and it came out in the Captain America movies. He realized that, you know, Shield ain't what it really says it is, and there's a deeper problem going on there. So, and again, I don't want to give anything away, and I know this is a very hot book at one point, and actually, I know it was a very hot book in my circle. I have it on my shelf. I have it in hardback. I have multiple copies in single issues. I even have them signed. I remember flying out to Wizard World, Texas when they had one out, and can't remember what city it was in, but flying out to Wizard World, Texas and getting him to sign it. And it even to this day, it still is a very, very memorable storyline. Great panel where he jumps out of the plane, lands square in the middle of the street, you know, his feet pound into that concrete, and he just takes off running. And you know he is running because he's got a mission. And just in the run alone, those few panels, that run alone, that jump, that land, and that taking off running alone says this story is going to take off with a bang. And it took off with a bang, and it ended with an explosion. So you can probably tell from my exuberance of this whole storyline that this is a good book that you need to have on your story. This is probably one of the great Captain America stories that could be told.
My next story, I liked it so much it got the omnibus. Iron Fist.
Yeah.
Again, another Ed Brubaker, but he tag teamed it with Matt Fraction.
That's right. That was my first introduction to Matt Fraction.
Yeah, I also had I think his Iron Man run was right before this one. But what really drew me to this was David Aja's artwork. I mean, stunning. Talk about marriage of artists working together with their writer. Particularly in this run, even though it's an omnibus, it's one of the shorter runs. I think it was only like 14 issues, but the middle run, the 7 capital cities of heaven.
Yeah.
That was the run in this omnibus that really blew me away, because it was really an ongoing storyline from the original, the first story, but this one sort of was the middle and the end. You've got this sort of like Mortal Kombat tournament going on.
Yeah.
You've got Iron Fist. You've got all these new characters he's bringing in. I think a lot of the Netflix series really should be attributed to this run.
Yeah, I
Because,
agree.
because this, even though this run again was only like 14 issues, it still continued with other artists, other writers. But this, I think, drew the initial attention and popularity. And yeah, to your point about Captain America with Cassidy and Johnny Riber, this was like everybody's sort of new introduction to Iron Fist, since he hadn't had a run in a very long time.
I think he had runs, but I don't think any of them were this caliber.
Agreed. And I think that's what really sold it for a lot of people, because in theory he's a cool character, but I don't think it was really fleshed out to the point where, yeah, it was done in a way that it drew people in, and there was a really strong mythology, and Fraction and Brubaker definitely set the tone for that. And yeah, I have the original issues plus the omnibus. The omnibus, I think, is a little bit larger than the normal issues, so the artwork is bigger. There's a little more, you can see a little more of the detail. And yeah, Aja knocks it out of the park. Pretty much anything he does, I pick up now.
There was no Iron Fist in my collection prior to that. That brought Iron Fist into my personal collection, and then made me go back and do a little research and pick up some older issues, and then continue on when Fraction started it again. For my last one, I'm actually going to take it back a little bit, and I guess I'm gonna tell you a little story. I was living in California again. You know, Steve and I were somewhat neighbors. I was in the East Bay. He was over in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I had always wanted to go to Heroes Con, and I hadn't gone. I think at that point I had only gone to a handful of shows, a few in maybe one in Florida, one in Georgia when I was in college or after college or something, and then the rest in California. So I had decided that I'm going to go out to Heroes Con, and I was going to Heroes Con specifically to do one thing, was to meet George Tuska and Dave Cochran. So when I went out to Charlotte for Heroes Con, and I was able to meet George Tuska, it just blew me away. His art is great. You know, I was able to kind of have a good conversation with him. And Luke Cage, Hero for Hire was one of those books that he started off reading. It was Luke Cage. It was Luke Cage. It was George Tuska, George Perez, Roy Thomas, John Romita Sr. This was the creative team around this book. And this book was very, very popular. I mean, there was a Black Western hero before this, and his name was Lobo, and there were 2 issues of that book. So this became, you know, the first Black superhero. And I felt they put a lot of energy, a lot of time into these books. And one thing that I really liked the facial expressions that were drawn by these artists. I really liked some of the stories that Roy Thomas was bringing in to put Luke Cage kind of through the ropes of, you know, you're a hero now, so you have to go through these steps. You have to climb this ladder to get to this next level, which I think he eventually did get to. He was the street level, in your face, New York hero. He wasn't in outer space. You know, he wasn't in Atlantis. He wasn't in Asgard. He was basically, at the time, he was the people's champ. And being the people's champ, he fought the people that mess with the people. He fought the criminals that mess with the people. And that's what his first run was about before he joins with the Iron Fist. So I wanted to go back because what I've done, and probably the last like maybe 7-8 years ago, I went through and I picked up every single issue, trying to complete this entire run of of Luke Cage Hero for Hire. And I think I probably have about 95% of them. I think there's a few pieces here and there missing, but I pretty much have them all. And to boot, I actually got a chance to meet George Perez, who signed some, George Tuska, who signed some, Roy Thomas signed some. So I have these pieces in my collection. This is a story that, for me, this is a story that you should go buy the single issues. To hold that, cheap Marvel paper in your hand and to flip through it and to look at just the way the panels are arranged. This story was good, but also just to have him go through love and go through dealing with the neighborhood and the community. One thing that I envisioned was having people who love the show go back and buy some of these issues, go back and lock into these issues, because I think they'll see that this character has been tried and have proven himself over and over again, and he should be the leader of the Avengers, which he ended up being. All of the success that he's had, he's definitely put in the work. And Roy Thomas and all the other writers have really did a good job at keeping this guy relevant. I mean, he is he's the people's champion. He will always be relevant. He's fighting the good fight for the people who he's fighting the good fight for the 98%.
I like champ. I think that's the perfect nickname for Luke Cage.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's always what he's been representing. And yeah, I think it's really cool that it sounds like they took a lot of that inspiration when they did the Netflix series.
Yeah.
And looked back and did their research. So very cool. I'm going to jump forward. I'm going to go to the most recent story out of all of the stories that I picked. Also a Thor story.
God Killer.
This is, spoiler alert. Jason Aaron, Esad Ribic. I'm really picking the first two stories. It's God Killer and the God Bomb. It's the first 11 issues.
Right.
Thor goes up against this brand new villain, and sort of as the title describes, he's killing gods. Jason Aaron, he knows the perfect voice for Thor, his external monologues, for the narrative. And then you've got Esad Ribic, who's doing this. It almost looks like a Renaissance style of artwork. And the whole book, I was rereading it a few days ago, and it feels like it could be like straight out of like a medieval library. That's how it reads, as though you're reading like a legend, like a legend of old.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you've got Thor, who feels like he's almost like he's Thor, but he's also got this like Conan the Barbarian style, and he's really just taking everybody out. But then he's got this villain who's got he an endless army, which again reminds me of Conan. There's a lot of parallels there. But it was a great way to kick off, and he just recently ended his run after, I think it was like 5 years. And I think the next movie, the third one, they're going to base off of the latest part of his run. And so, yeah, he really knocked it out of the park. This run was really epic, and this was just the start of it.
I have to admit, hands down, J. Scott Campbell's Thor, Matt Fraction's Thor, Jason Aaron's Thor, I literally didn't stop. Those three, and I've actually gone back and I've read some Kurt Busiek's Thor. I've read, can't think of the guy who was writing for Thor when Thor came back with John Romita Sr. I've read some pretty good issues, and I've had Thor in my collection prior to this. This story is a good story. God Killer and God Bomb blew me away. Blew me away, man. It just, how he was going to even to other planets and they were praying to their gods, and it was good. Just the reason why the God Killer is the God Killer was like, oh, okay, I get it. He actually should be doing this.
In his own twisted way. I mean, yeah, I think there is a way to agree with why he's doing what he's doing.
Right.
However, he's also going medieval on these guys, on these gods.
Yeah. Yeah. He definitely needs to be taken out.
Yeah, it ain't pretty. But it's interesting because this is the only Thor solo run that I have. I have read some of J. Michael Straczynski's. It is great, but for me, Jason Aaron is sort of the undisputed. Just like Ta-Nehisi Coates for you is for Black Panther.
Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed those stories. Let's jump into the hot seat. So right now I'm going to take your stories and tell you what my top would be, and I want you to do it back to me. So as I listen to your stories, all of your stories great. I have probably almost all of them, but I don't have the Daredevil. Wasn't a major Daredevil fan. But I want to say for me, the top was the Iron Fist. The Iron Fist to me is probably, if I were sitting here thinking, okay, which of these stories I need to run out and pick up, I would definitely run out and pick up the Iron Fist first, because for me, it was ground changing. It was groundbreaking. It was a whole new game changer. I learned so much about Kung Lung and all of those characters and the whole battle royale fight scene and all of that, and who's going to be the next top fighter and who's going to wield it. It was epic. So for me, Iron Fist, that's the number one you should run out and pick up. That's the number one for me.
For me, it's got to be Captain America. Already a Captain America fan. The way you spoke about John Niereiber's story with Captain America, it's one of the few that I think I read. I remember Cassidy's artwork, but I don't remember the exact story. But you're making me want to go back and pick up the story. Purely based on how you described it. I think out of all of those. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Captain America.
Cool. Well, man, that was a great show. I hope all of you guys out there got something out of it. And of course, following up will be, we're gonna go on to DC next. We're gonna talk about those stories when we come back to our next episode. So we hope you guys enjoyed the show. Again, before you sign off, remember to leave some comments, hit like, hit share, hit subscribe, tell your friends and family about them. Ladies and gentlemen.
What's your favorite 5?
Back. Yeah, what is your favorite 5? You can leave that information down in the comment section below. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here with us, and we will definitely see you again next time. From your boy, Cool Ty.
Here's Steve.
See you next time.